Hello and welcome back to the EMJ GOLD podcast, brought to you by EMJ, your number one open access destination for HCPs and pharma globally. Hi Jade, how are you? Welcome back to another episode.
Thank you, doing very well, thanks. Excited to be sharing today's one.
Absolutely. What do we have coming up today?
Well, it's one of my favourite episodes that we've recorded this season, I think. Very much looking forward to sharing a conversation. Literally just had it with Dr Daejin Abidoye, who's the Vice President of Therapeutic Area Head for Solid Tumor Oncology at AbbVie.
Hopefully.
In this role, he's responsible for the clinical development of all assets in late oncology clinical development.
That's right. His career includes a variety of experience in oncology, cancer research and drug development as well. He has experience at a range of companies too, so Gilead, Roche-Genentech, and prior to this, he was also a doctor.
Yeah, it's given him some really invaluable experience, and we do touch on this time in the clinic during our conversation, as well as how his leadership style has changed over his years in the industry, the amazing developments in technology we've seen in cancer treatment, and so much more.
Sounds fascinating. Let's listen in.
Let's do it. Hello, Daejin. Lovely to see you. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic.
Lovely to hear. So for those of you that don't know, Daejin is the wonderful head of solid tumors and oncology development at AbbVie, a role that you've been in for how long is it now?
Close to about 3 years. Really excited.
You enjoying your time there?
Oh yeah, this is great. This is great.
They're treating you well.
They're treating me well, but I think more importantly, just to be in a position where you're actually able to do things for patients, there's no higher calling and no greater fulfillment. And so doing what I'm doing at AbbVie, knowing that we're making a difference for patients is really exciting.
Yeah, I can imagine, definitely. So as you sort of alluded to there, you're very interested in patient well-being, and
Yep.
I do know that you are medically trained and actually started your career as a doctor. So I'd
Yeah.
really love to know what lessons you've actually taken from your time in patient care that you do use in your work today with AbbVie.
Yes, and that's actually a really great question. For those that are not familiar with my career, as you alluded to, I spent a lot of time prior to joining AbbVie in clinical practice as a hematologist oncologist. And certainly, I think, broadly speaking, that background and that orientation developed a deep passion, at least within me, about caring about people and about their conditions. As I think about sort of the lessons that I've learned and how these lessons have sort of translated to my experience at AbbVie, I think one of the first lessons is about being patient, being humble, and just recognizing that you don't have all of the answers. When I look back to, my career as a practicing physician, one of the things they would say back then is that you really don't become a doctor till you've lost your first patient. And it's really a lightning moment when you realize that as a physician, you do all that you can, but you don't have all the answers. And sometimes everything that you might do, all of your efforts might not lead to the desired outcome. That is true even within the context of pharmaceutical development, where you're still taking care of patients and you're still looking for an optimal outcome, but you don't always have all the answers. And whether it's a physician in the hospital who is not able to save his patient and takes those learnings about how they can develop better care and how they can develop better medicines, to the pharmaceutical world, and certainly my experience at AbbVie, where you have positive trials and you have negative trials. And within those negative trials, there's a lot of learning that has to happen. And when you've gone through that experience, you learn that even though you may have some of the smartest technology and some of the smartest medicines, you don't always have all the answers. And so having that sense of humility as you take on that journey of hopefully turning a molecule into a medicine is certainly a lesson that I've taken from clinical practice and certainly has been of great value to me at AbbVie. And I think one other clear lesson for me, you hear a lot about having that passion for what you do, and I think that's certainly really important. I think the other piece to that that I learned in clinical practice, and it certainly has had a very strong impact for me at AbbVie, is that it's definitely important to be passionate about what you do, but I think it's also important to care and be touched by the impact that you have. Well, what do I mean by that? Um, there's certainly, whether it's when you think about the hospital, whether it's the surgeon in the ICU or in the operating room who is taking out that dangerous tumor, or it's the managerial staff and sanitation staff that's cleaning the floors. They both are having the same impact, which is to provide a positive experience for anyone coming into that hospital. Even as a parent, sometimes, there are very few parents that would say that they're passionate about being a parent, but you do care and you are touched by the impact that you have on your kids. And I think about, my experience as a physician in terms of some of the days were harder than others, but I was always mindful of the impact that I had on my patients. And when I translate that to AbbVie, drug development is hard. It's there are many successes, but there are also many failures. But the thing that continuously keeps you going and keeps you positive about the journey you're on is that recognition of the impact that you have, not only on the people that your team and the people that work around you, but also on those patients that could potentially benefit. And I think that's one thing that has really sort of uh, 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 translated throughout my career, is really just being mindful of that impact. And so even on your worst days, you're still providing a positive impact on patients. And so those are certainly the two definite lessons that I've learned that have been a great help for me at AbbVie.
Yeah, that's expertly put there, I have to say. It's really important, like you say, to stay close to the impact you have in any business, but especially so in health when you're dealing with so many patients on such a wide scale as well. It's similar to, that old story about JFK went to visit the NASA base and he asked the cleaner what he was doing, and he said, "Oh, I'm putting a man on the moon." It's every single cog in the function. It's working towards making sure that patients are living happier, healthier lives, no matter whether you are sweeping the floors or if you're making these broad sweeping changes and decisions in policy making. So yeah, I completely agree with you. Wonderful. So you've clearly had a lot of experience in industry since your move from the clinical side. I'm really curious to see how you've seen your leadership style evolve and change throughout your years in the industry as well.
Sure. I would say leadership is tough.
Mm.
It's because of the fact that it's dynamic. It's always evolving. And I think there's always room for improvement. We as individuals constantly evolve, and therefore your leadership style has to constantly evolve. I think for me, as I sort of look back on the experience that I've had, one of the things that has really impacted my leadership style and where my leadership style continues to evolve is really having that greater emphasis on enabling and empowering people and empowering the team. When you first, come into any experience, whether it's in the clinical practice or in pharmaceutical development, there's that focus on the task at hand. As you develop experience, you recognize that that task falls to not just yourself, but to the entire team. And as much as you can enable and empower the team and create and foster an environment of learning, shared learning, and co-creation, that always will invariably lead to the best outcome. So it's not just about developing medicines, but it's about developing people and developing the people that work on your team. And so I think for me, that's certainly been a critical area for me where I've grown and evolved, and something that I'm pretty excited about as I think about the next chapters for the future.
For sure, yeah. How often do you get to touch in very much with your team and sort of touch base and make sure that they're getting on pretty well?
Every day, every day.
Passing on your leadership and your lessons that you've
Yeah.
taken onto them.
Yeah. And it's every day. And what you try and do is, I talked about sort of that environment of connectivity. Um, what you want to do as a leader is get beyond sort of that didactic check-in and really get to a place where your team knows when to check in with you, how to check in with you, um, and when and where they feel that they can take decisions on their own. And so, like I said, at the end of the day, as one individual, you can't do everything, but as a team, particularly a well-empowered team, the opportunities are limitless. And as a leader, a true leader, you really want to be able to build a high-functioning team, a team that can really function almost without you. It's really what the goal is. And so I think bringing to the table a sense of authenticity, a sense of integrity, a sense of vision is really what a true leader is supposed to do, to say, look, this is the vision. Let's have a conversation and develop a community of how we get there. And then as we go on that journey, to really empower each other to be able to bring the best out of each other. That's really what you want to do as a leader.
Absolutely agree. Yeah. Empowering your team, so huge. Like you say, not only trusting in them to deliver what you expect from them, but knowing that they trust in themselves, that they don't have to always refer back to you and say, is this okay? Just knowing that my leader trusts me, I can do what I need to do.
Absolutely.
Lovely. So getting back onto the oncology space,
Yeah.
we have seen a shift from irinotecan-based chemotherapy to precision medicine in cancer treatment. And I'd love to get your scientific knowledge and your expertise on why this is and what are some of the key advances that are really driving this change.
That's a great question. For a long time, chemotherapy has been the mainstay of treatment for cancers, with certainly irinotecan being one of them, like a lot of other, traditional chemotherapies. It works, pretty much by, targeting rapidly dividing cells, and really targeting them for destruction through internal mechanisms. The challenge with chemotherapy is that it affects both cancerous cells as well as healthy cells. And the outcomes in which that patients, while they may have the benefit of having their cancer under control or treated by the chemotherapy, there are a lot of untoward and significant side effects that they ultimately tend to experience. And in addition to that, what we find is that the outcomes for these are very variable, and the outcomes for treatment don't necessarily take into account the molecular diversity that we see with a lot of these different cancers. What we've seen today, and certainly over the last couple of years with the advancement of our understanding of cancer and cancer biology, is that we are now able to better target a lot of these tumors and target them based off of our understanding of the underlying cancer biology. And this leads ultimately to the development of better therapies as well as better outcomes for a lot of these patients. So when you talk about sort of the shift from irinotecan-based chemotherapy or the traditional chemotherapy to what we have today in terms of precision medicine in cancer treatment, it is driven by a combination of scientific advances, by changes in terms of the clinical need, as well as a lot of our improvements in terms of our technological capabilities. And ultimately, this has allowed us to better understand not only the biology of cancer, but the best way to address the treatments for these cancers. We talk about genomics. When you think about cancer genomics and the advances that we've had in cancer genomics with a lot of these tumors, what we've understood today is that a lot of these tumors have various molecular alterations and genetic alterations that we can actually target, not only to better understand the prognosis for some of these patients, but also in terms of the potential outcomes for some of these patients. And so when we think about where we are right now in terms of the forefront of precision medicine, one of the key ones, particularly when we think about cytotoxic therapy, are ADCs, antibody drug conjugates. these antibody drug conjugates are at the forefront of precision medicine, where we are actually utilizing our understanding of the cancer biology, these molecular genetic alterations, some of which lead to expression of various cancer related antigens on the surface of cells. And we can now use those particular antigens to actually direct therapy, specific cytotoxic therapy, to the cancer cells. And then with that direction, actually spare a lot of the healthy cells and ultimately lead to treatments that have less side effects, better outcomes, and a much more positive experience for patients. At AbbVie, that's certainly something that we've really focused on, specifically with our Topo1 payload that we have for our ADCs and our precision medicine-based approach. We've seen this thus far in terms of our portfolio, whether it's our c-Met-directed ADCs that really focus on that c-Met expression on tumors. And we've seen some activity of that in non-small cell lung cancer. We've also taken a look at some of these genomic alterations that are observed in ovarian cancer, one of which is referred to as the folate alpha receptor, and developed really precise targeting therapies around that as well. And this has ultimately led to great outcomes. And so those are just to name a few. But I think we're just at the beginning. We're just at the precipice of where we're going to go with precision medicine. ADCs, I believe, or antibody drug conjugates have had a really strong benefit from that. But I think there's a lot more that we can do, and there's a lot more that we're looking forward to.
I can imagine, yeah. It's amazing the leaps and bounds that technology has been able to take over the last few years, and it really makes you wonder, in the next 10, 20 years, what are we going to be able to do for patients?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, pretty magical. So yeah, you've touched on obviously the value precision medicine there. How do you think this is the most impactful and important in improving patient outcomes, especially when targeting tumor types with really high unmet needs?
I think when you think about the patient experience in terms of the unmet need, I think what you want to be able to do is develop the right drug for the right patient at the right time. And with precision medicine and with the unmet need, what it allows you to do is to really streamline your development, where you're giving the right drug to the right patient at the right time. Historically, when we think about where things have been with chemotherapy and chemotherapy as a standard, it was sort of a one size fits all. And that led to almost like the analogy of going after a small item with a shotgun approach. With precision-based medicine, it allows us to have a much more focused approach. It allows us to really think about, as we think about sort of the evolution of biomarkers in precision medicine, where we develop these drugs, that we can actually not only develop these drugs much more efficiently, with much smarter, more efficient clinical trial design, but that ultimately that we can develop these medicines with specific biomarkers that predict not only which patients are more likely to benefit, but also can predict what the potential outcome will be for a lot of these patients. And so I think, as I think about the unmet need and how this addresses the unmet need, I think it allows us to have much more efficient drug development. And at the same time, it allows the conversation between the physician and the patient to be much more clear, where the physician can say, based off of your particular tumor type, the characteristics that we're seeing with your tumor, we are recommending this particular therapy, and this is what our expectation will be in terms of the outcome.
Gosh, it's a very in-depth approach, and it's amazing to see what's able to happen. So we've touched on the drug development side, but obviously getting these precision therapies from bench to bedside is going to take quite a lot more involvement from external parties potentially as well. What stakeholders do you think need to be brought on board to ensure that they actually do make it to patients?
I think it's critical in terms of, as we look across all the facets of drug development and talk about bench to bedside, discovery research, product development, having an interaction with the healthcare community is going to be critical. when we think about what's really key in terms of bench to bedside, in terms of how we develop these, it's going to be important that we're looking at the biomarkers, and that we are developing these drugs that specifically target cancers using that signature biomarker, and that we can actually test patients. And so when you talk about the stakeholders, in the past, patients were meeting with their physicians, and it was a interaction between the patient and the physician. With precision medicine, and what's going to be key is that we're now bringing in the science of the treatment. And so stakeholders are the stakeholder partnership is expanding, not just in terms of the patient, the physician, but also the science. And so we talk about testing, we talk about labs. All of those things are going to be critical to create a seamless treatment paradigm for the patient. So as the patient comes in to the hospital and the patient's being diagnosed with the disease, seamlessly the patient's tumor is being evaluated for the underlying molecular markers that will enable a treatment prescription for the patient, and also predict the outcome for that. And I think all of those various components are going to be critical. So whether it's the biopsy, whether it's the pathologist, whether it's the hospital that's doing the specific molecular testing, whether it's the oncologist that's having a discussion with the patient about systemic therapy, all of those things are going to be critical when we think about stakeholder engagement for precision medicine to be of benefit to patients.
For sure. Yeah, it sort of brings it back to that topic we were discussing in the beginning, that everyone's involved, everyone that is a stakeholder, whether they know it or not, need to be brought into the journey to ultimately help patients.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked what you said as well about bringing in the science of the treatment. I think it's important to bring patients on board and help them understand what the treatments they're actually going to be going through is.
Uh-huh.
You know, there's so much I suppose, misinformation out there as well. As soon as a patient is diagnosed with a certain condition, immediately you go to Dr. Google, you try and find out, oh, what's this? What's going on here? So it's great that as the science evolves, so does HCP communication with patients and how they bring them on board with their own health journey so they can, empower themselves as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So speaking of patients, this is my final question, but you are a board member of the cancer support community in San Francisco as well. I'd love to know what drew you into this role and what being a member has taught you.
Oh, wow. So you touched upon something that I'm really passionate about. So we talked a little bit about treatment for patients. We spent some time talking about treatment for patients and talking about precision medicine. I think, one of the things that's probably not spoken about enough is the support for a lot of patients who are going through this process. And I think for me, who going from both a provider, a healthcare provider, to someone now working in pharmaceutical development, I've had a very significant career with a passion for not only treating patients, but really supporting them in any way I can. And so when the cancer support community approached me, I was more than eager to help them in their mission. Now, for those that are not familiar with the cancer support community, this is a broad organization which was started back in the 1990s I was founded by someone by the name of Shannon McGowan, which was really designed to really look at ways of supporting patients in the community, supporting families that have been impacted by cancer. And that certainly leads now to where they are, with their mission, which is to really uplift, strengthen people who have been impacted by cancer, both patients as well as their families, and to really provide support and to foster a compassionate community that really helps towards breaking down those barriers to healthcare. What's exciting about what the CSC provides is both provision and services in terms of counseling, nutrition, education, exercise programs, emergency financial assistance when they can, teaching patients about how to better take care of themselves, and providing sort of that emotional support, as well as support groups for patients who are going through this process. one of the things that was really impressed upon me, several years ago when I began treating patients was, while we had very effective medicines to be able to treat patients, there really wasn't a lot out in the environment with regards to support. And so one of the more common questions I would get from patients and from their families who were receiving a new cancer diagnosis is, where do we go for support? Where do we go for information? Where do we go for help? The cancer support community actually provides a lot of that. And so to be part of that and be part of that mission is something I'm really excited about. Speaking specifically about the cancer support community of the San Francisco Bay Area, we've got a great team there, a wonderful leadership team with Lucinda Bazell, who's the CEO, Julie Barr, who is our director of clinical programs, and then Caroline Sison, who leads both the educational programs and the outreach, as well as a talented administration staff. But, it's once again, it gets back to those people who are passionate about what they do. I'm certainly passionate about seeing the outcomes for patients and the potential impact that we can have. And so when they reached out to me, I was more than happy to join, and it's been a great ride ever since.
Yeah, I mean, there's no better place to be if you want to see the positive impact of what you guys are doing from above than going and interacting with patients. Yeah, wonderful. Well, Daejin, it's been lovely to talk with you today. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Great.
Well, look, a very good note to end on there. As ever, do you have a highlight from the conversation you could pick out?
Yeah, so many to choose from. But for me, it's got to be what Daejin mentioned at the end there about people that are passionate about what they do. It's such an important trait to have, especially when working in healthcare.
Yeah.
You're improving patients' lives, you're seeing the outcomes of therapies. And it's so, so clear that Daejin has that passion driving him forward in his work, both in industry and in his work with patient support groups. So yeah, really good to see.
Absolutely agree with that there. Really lovely insight. I also like what Daejin spoke about around developing the right drug. I thought that was really interesting, right patient, right time, which of course historically hasn't always been able to be the case in chemotherapy, which was the example that Daejin mentioned. I think it was really amazing to see how technology is leading the way forward in personalised treatments, and I think he articulated it really, really well.
Absolutely, yeah. But with that, I do think we've come to the end of the episode. Thank you again to Daejin for coming onto the show, and thank you to you at home for listening.
Yes, we will be back again soon with another insightful episode, but until then, it's bye from us.
See you.